Jillian and I were talking the other day, and I think it was yesterday actually, and what it was is that she sent me all these links. What she's noticing is that a lot of the products now which are showing transgender are now being boycotted, whether it's real, whether it's another agenda. I told you they're always at the front and the back, at the yes and the no. They're at the beginning and the end. They're there making and doing more. But what it is that these companies are going out of business, so they're saying. So what I did was I took little bits. One of them is Australian Sky. There's a couple of other people, because obviously this place Target and Bud Light are having serious problems right now. So we're going to play the video and then put something, I'll talk at the end. This is Richard D. Hall. I followed him quite a lot years ago I followed him quite a lot. Now he made this speech in 2014, so you've got different politicians here than the ones today, if you understand or follow any of British politics and who's there and who's the Prime Minister. So what it was is, let's go up here. Not a very good stoppage, there we go, that'll do. This is Ed Miliband, and Ed Miliband was running to be he was head of the Labour Party going into an election which David Cameron of the Tory party won, and this guy's from the Labour Party. But what's so important about this is that this would have gone out probably on a Sunday afternoon, and everybody's been watching it who's into politics and wants to know what's going on, and won't have realised what is going to happen in this video when we play it. Now they are doing this to you all the time. They tell you things, but we just don't. It must go in one ear and out the rest. So I start off with this bit of video, and then we're going to carry on with the rest of it, with the problems of now other companies. But if you understand this, you'll understand maybe a bit more of the rest.
Staying on the subject of puppets, we'll take a look at this clown here. I'm going to show you a clip of Ed Miliband. What's important is not what he says, but how many times he says it. Just watch this.
These strikes are wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on, but parents and the public have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. After today's disruption, I urge both sides to put aside the rhetoric, get round the negotiating table and stop it happening again.
I listened to your speech in Wrexham and you talked about the Labour Party being a movement. A lot of people in that movement are the people who are on strike today, and they'll be looking at you and thinking, well, you're describing these strikes as wrong. Why aren't you giving us more leadership as a leader of the Labour movement?
At a time when negotiations are still going on, I do believe these strikes are wrong. And that's why I say both sides should, after today's disruption, get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and sort the problem out. Because the public and parents have been let down by both sides. The government's acted in a reckless and provocative manner.
I spoke to Francis Moore before I came here, and the tone he was striking was a very conciliatory one. Do you think there's a difference between the words they're saying in public and the attitude they're striking in private in these negotiations? Are there negotiations in good faith, would you say?
What I say is that the strikes are wrong when negotiations are still going on, but the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner in the way it's gone about these issues. After today's disruption, I urge both sides to get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and stop this kind of thing happening again.
It's a statement you've made publicly and you'll make to me, and this will be broadcast obviously, but have you spoken privately to any union leaders and expressed your view to them on a personal level, would you say?
Well, what I say in public and in private to everybody involved in this is get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and stop this kind of action happening again. These strikes are wrong because negotiations are still going on, but parents and the public have been let down by the government as well, who've acted in a reckless and provocative manner.
You're a parent, I'm a parent, a lot of people watching this will be parents. Has it affected you personally, this action? Has it affected your family, your friends? I mean, and what is the net effect of that going to be on parents having to take a day off work today?
I think parents up and down the country have been affected by this action, and it's wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on. Parents have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. I think that both sides should, after today's disruption, get around the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric, and stop this kind of thing.
All right. 5 times. 5 times he said exactly the same thing. Now, what that tells me is that those words have been written down and pretty much learned. And I would ask the question, who has written those words? Has he written them and learned them? Someone else written them and learned them? If someone else has written them and he learned them, that means he's 100% a puppet. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wrote them down and learned them. Is that the behaviour of a leader? Not in my opinion. The only thing that we should be saying to the likes of Ed Miliband, and I would include David Cameron, Theresa May and Hague and the lot of them, the only question we should be getting involved with them is take me to your leader. That's it. Because he's not the leader and neither is David Cameron. And this is what we need to be exposing in British politics. The fact that they're all puppets who and are answerable to unseen puppet masters.
As I said last week, we are now officially in Pride Month, and it hasn't started too well. We learnt yesterday that JP Morgan just downgraded Target's stock after its longest losing streak in 23 years, citing too many concerns rising. That was out of the story I gave you last week about Target running their whole Pride Month specials. Happy Pride Month, Target. Even Elon Musk has got in on the act, warning that it won't be long before there are class action lawsuits by shareholders against the company and the board of directors for the destruction of shareholder value. This is how this madness has to be defeated. This follows the latest update on Bud Light, with Anheuser-Busch, reportedly the parent company, losing $27 billion in market value thanks to its attempt to force transgender ideology onto America's beer-drinking men and women. In this ad a few weeks ago.
This month I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya! Cheers!
Well, that was Dilvin Mulvaney, the transgender star of the Bud Light ad, and many others.
So I recently told my parents that I may be a little bit romantically interested in women. And that was a big shock for them, considering the past 10 years of coming out as gay, then queer, then non-binary, then trans. And I think it was just a bit of a shock. So I tell my dad and he goes, well, I would love to see you get a woman pregnant. And I said, oh, no, she would be getting me.
She would be getting me pregnant. It looks like somebody may have been taking the mickey all along. Billions of dollars lost, who knows? Despite all that, the Pride Month bandwagon trundles on. Walmart, the major American retailer, is selling a whole raft of LGBTQ stuff in their stores, including apparently a breathable chest binder aimed at trans, lesbian and tomboys. The binder, offered online, features pictures of a young girl modelling the product. Chest binders are, of course, the first step in the transgender journey for girls to become boys, and are used by girls to compress their breasts in order to create a masculine appearance. Further down that particular journey, surgeons happily chop off those breasts. That's what this is actually all about. And this flag here, this transgender flag, that flag is advocating and promoting that agenda. That's not the old rainbow flag of the LGBT lot that we all voted for in same-sex marriage. This is the transgender flag. You might think that it's terrific, or you might not. But just be clear what it actually means and stands for. The backlash against Target and North Face and others in the States hasn't stopped the onslaught of trans and gay propaganda aimed at children. Yesterday, the Washington, D.C. Public Library hosted a children's pride parade for babies, toddlers, children and teens aged 0 to 18. Because, you know, 0 years old kids, they need to be purged of any homophobic or transphobic sentiments, surely. In Britain, The Sun is reporting on a woke health centre where the doctors ask parents if their newborn babies are trans or non-binary. One of the world's largest corporates, Microsoft, meanwhile, has partnered with one of the world's most determined LGBT organisations to ensure their ideology permeates every teenage boy's Xbox video games. In the US, the Secretary of Defense has jumped on the bandwagon and is claiming that LGBT troops add to America's strength. I'm sure the Chinese Communist Army must be bemused by that. And the US Embassy to the Vatican, to the Holy See, is also flying the transgender flag for the entire month of June. Remember, this is the same ideology that only last week caused a furore by using trans activists to openly mock the crucifixion of Christ. Meanwhile, this week we also learned that the head of a German facility that carries out so-called gender-affirming care has published a study of transgender people and found that the level of life satisfaction in that group was not increased for those who had undergone gender-affirming surgery as compared to those who had not. A much older study published in 2011 of Swedes who had undergone sex reassignment in prior decades, taken in transgender-friendly Sweden, concluded, quote, persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risks for mortality, suicidal behaviour and psychiatric morbidity than the general population. End of quote. This is the reality behind what we are encouraging with a month-long propaganda campaign in schools and elsewhere. In my opinion, it's a disgrace, and future generations will look back in horror at what we pushed on the children of the 2020s. An article earlier this year quoted Jamie Reed, a far-left LGBT activist and whistleblower who worked for 4 years at the Washington University Transgender Center in St. Louis Children's Hospital, saying that, quote, a common tactic was for doctors to tell the parent of a girl, you can either have a living son or a dead daughter. How sick and how cruel is that? As I say, this is the sort of emotional abuse being inflicted on who knows how many parents and children in the name of this political ideology. And then we also this week got this insane story about a teenage school girl in Oklahoma being beaten up by a fellow student, a biological male who identifies as a girl, in the girls' toilets. What is so appalling about this story is that under Oklahoma law, kids have to use the bathroom of their biological, i.e. their real sex, but the school is claiming they had no idea that the girl, the she, the bully, was actually a male. Meanwhile, in Vermont, where the law is different, a group of young teenage girls are not only feeling threatened in their locker room by a biological male, they are being threatened by their school with being formally charged with hate speech and bullying, charges which could then prevent them getting into certain colleges and so on, simply for speaking up. Throughout the month of June, through much of July as well, our cities and schools and shops and corporations and streets and public transport will be festooned with the flag of, here it is.
I think what it is it's because these companies have associated themselves, and then of course this person went from being a man, all these things, into wanting a woman to impregnate him, and it's making people boycott these items. But I do like, you know, if you're going to watch a quirky news, if you're going to watch people question things, whether it's all part of the agenda and these people are just part of it, or I told you they're at the end and the beginning, they want the yes and the no, they're there to pick up on both sides and then play the game and play you off against each other. But if you want to watch a quirky news, if you want to watch people ask questions, if you want to watch a channel take the mickey out of people, watch Sky News. They're very good at it. I remember once a school governor telling me that they knew how the schools were faring and who was living where, really, because the more benefit lunches they had, the more broken families, the more poorer families, and so they know these things. It seems really strange when we've had such a push towards this, that suddenly now everybody's not buying the goods or whatever it is. I mean, you just don't know. It's not a ploy for Budweiser to change their logo or something, or change the beer, but they put this person on, and then what it is they were gay, then something else, and something else, queer to transgender into a lesbian, and they're a man, and this seems to have turned people off. Jillian thinks that these companies will go out of business. What's your thought? You know, what's your thoughts? You know, we're put into these situations. What do you reckon's going on? Because something's going on.
There's a cleanup on every aisle. Target is targeting your kids. They put a target on my back, but they're targeting your kids. They don't even need to ask, 'cause you all know what it is. Yeah, that's why I keep a strap, and I'm always by my beds. They gotta stop. Yeah, you know we gonna win when they target.
The bit that alarms me the most is that if you feel this way, and maybe it feels a long time, but once you get to 16, 18, maybe you kind of know a little bit more about what you want, but if they are trying to target you as babies, how would a baby or a young child know what it wants to be able to be turned into all these things? I mean, what the hell is going on? I quite like this song. Good luck to this channel with their song.
Hello, I'm Roberta Crisson. This is Facets, Politics 80, one of a series of political interviews with ramifications for all of us this year of presidential elections. I'm privileged and pleased and honored to have next to me Mrs. Barbara Bush, the wife of presidential hopeful George Bush, who has survived a harrowing 2 days to get here, and I'd like for you to explain those if you could.
Well, at a breakfast this morning, someone gave me 2 buttons, one for George and one for me, that had a 5-0 on it. This was they said I must wear it until we get back our hostages. And I said to the lady, but there aren't 50 hostages, there are 53 hostages. And I feel...
Video emerged this week of gender botherer Dylan Mulvaney coming out as a lesbian, which means he's really just a straight white guy with a strange wardrobe. Poor Bud Light. They destroyed their entire brand for nothing.
Kids telling teachers they were uncomfortable in their bodies were immediately affirmed as trans, despite the fact that upwards of 90% of kids will grow out of these feelings if only they are allowed to do so. Schools work to facilitate children's transition in the classroom, complete with name and wardrobe changes, while implementing policies to keep it secret from the parents. The children had to be protected from those who loved them most. We pulled our children out, fleeing the woke ideology on gender and race that seemed closer to abuse than academics. Female cyclists losing titles to grown men who declared themselves trans and absconded with the prize money.
Is the tide changing? You know, I suppose this, you know, the transgender thing and the flag, it all started off because they felt persecuted or whatever it is, but now people are at least, well, are they, or is it part of the game? But it seems that people are standing up now feeling that they're persecuted by all this other stuff. I just think it's a personal taste, but I don't think we need to have it thrust in our faces. I don't think we need to turn on the television and nearly everything we watch has got transgender on it. You know, the majority of people aren't. But I'm not saying that, you know, everybody is free to be who they want to be, but these are agendas, these are money-making things, these are things being used. It's all being used. And maybe it serves these companies right who are losing millions right now, because we're a people, we have hearts, we're living, and they're messing around with it all.
You are not going to believe this. Look at this. This is an article by Bounding Into Comics, and they are reporting that The Little Mermaid is going to be a box office flop. That's right. The Little Mermaid, the same movie that Disney wouldn't shut up about, the same movie that they have been telling you that if you don't go see this movie, you are a hateful person. This movie, right? The Little Mermaid, it is set to be another box office flop for Disney. Yes, another one right after Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, because look at this. The Little Mermaid is set to lose Disney between $50 and $100 million. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, but Count, I've seen nothing but positive stories that The Little Mermaid is a success. Well, let's look at the numbers, okay? Let's look at the numbers, because as you can see here, this is by the numbers. This is the official box office numbers. Domestically, The Little Mermaid has only made $138 million, right? Internationally, The Little Mermaid has only made abysmal $68 million. And let me tell you something. These numbers are not going to go up, because all projections are stating that there is going to be a 60% drop in the second weekend, which is, I don't know, tomorrow, right? The Little Mermaid is not going to make its money back. The Little Mermaid is going to be another failure for Disney. And more publications are starting to cover it. Look at this. The Little Mermaid expected to be Disney's biggest fail this year. And no matter how many times Disney tells you that the reason why this movie is a failure, that the reason why this movie is not doing good in the box office is because they are sabotaging the reviews, right? They are review bombing. Or my favorite, that you are the problem, right? That you are a racist, that you are this, that you are that, a misogynist, whatever the case is. The fact of the matter is, The Little Mermaid is a movie that should have never, but it got made, and now it's gonna be one of Disney's biggest failure. And with Spider-Man, the Spider-Verse coming out and certainly being one of the biggest movies of the year, this would assure that The Little Mermaid ends up being Disney's biggest failure of 2023. And the reason why The Little Mermaid is going to be the worst failure for Disney, the reason is because Disney has it in their sick, twisted head that it is their job to try and educate our children on what right and wrong is. Disney believes that they are responsible for changing the course of what is acceptable. And
when I started making my videos and putting them on both the Unscrambled Channel and Sun and Moon Family United, you know, especially with the actors, I was really shocked that people were giving me lots of names to go and look them up. I mean, I'd look at them and I'd go, nah. You put the picture on top, it's like, oh my God, the hair's different, the clothes are different. You know, this is what they do. And because a lot of us have woken up and now realise this is what Hollywood is this the reason why there is the they're boycotting them. I mean, why would you want? I mean, he's saying that they're trying to educate children with the truth, when really we know that it's satanic. It's got sexual things in it, and it isn't what you think it is. And so is that what people have woken up to, and people don't want, they're not bothered anymore about going to the pictures and watching these things. And anyway, prices of tickets have gone up so much. How can you, they're so expensive. And even though they're saying, well, they only made 68 million, I mean, how many millions do they need when they're not even filming it like you think? They're not going out for a year and making it. It's all composites on computers. You know how they made Wallace and Gromit, the cartoon? That's how they're doing this. It's all done on computers. The actors don't even have to appear. They just get composite versions of them and then edit them into the videos. So nothing is real. Once you know that, why do you want to go and watch something that is completely composite CGI? And why would you want to go and watch it when you know none of it is real? And they're not really looking at that street. They're not really looking at those mountains. They're all, however they do it, and they plonk it all in, and well, here they are, they're in an empty room, and once they've done their special effects, everything's plonked in. After a while you think, I don't really want to watch any of that. And don't forget, I mean, not that I've noticed, I haven't been to the pictures in a long time, but maybe the horror movies are off because they use those to completely frighten you so that you're not going to take much notice of the news. The thing is, they probably tell us most of it, but then, we're not noticing.
Desolation of the brand that was once the #1 beer in all of America, facilitated by one of the most successful boycotting campaigns. Successful for the average rank-and-file individual that doesn't want to have their good sensibilities and their family values subverted even further, has maintained its longevity and achieved the high levels of success for itself, mostly due to the organic nature of the boycott in and of itself. It was a call to action to those in the middle of America, hell, and probably your neighbors that are out there, that this is a step too far. Celebrating a mentally ill huckster was somehow going to make light beer somewhat palatable. Bold move, but it ultimately failed.
A couple of videos talking about how Target supposedly has dropped their Pride merchandise. This is all, I consider it a rumor, even though they officially came out and said they were going to be dropping some of the merchandise. They didn't specifically say what merchandise, and I haven't actually seen proof of them dropping this merchandise at all. Now, apparently, we have another article from the street that goes into this about the merchandise and saying that Target has apparently dumped its Pride merchandise, and it goes into a little bit of detail about what they're going to be doing with this merchandise. And the answer, I guarantee you, will not shock you in the slightest, because it has to do with the employees at Target that Target itself tries to use as some sort of like poster child for sympathy whenever they want to talk about having to take down their Pride merchandise and hide it in the back of the stores. It's all because of team members' safety, and that's what we're doing as a company. Well, apparently, according to Fox News, they have an insider at Target that says the rank and file staffers, which are basically just the team members, the people who are working at the front lines, feel left behind by executives, and they say, without our best interest in mind. Insider says there is an uneasiness at Target as Pride Month gets underway, which I am almost positive that is the truth, because I fully expect there to be some sort of uneasiness in this corporation. It is all over the news for going.
Could be going down a path of literal destruction. Audiences everywhere are rejecting this garbage, but more specifically, the international audience is boycotting this mess. And this is what is essential for success of the box office. Movies need to do well domestically, of course, but the real value comes from the reception overseas, and The Little Mermaid isn't getting a lot of that. Let's compare this to 2019's Aladdin movie. The international box office got nearly double of what the domestic box office did, but if we go back to The Little Mermaid, it is already falling behind. The international box office is half of what the movie has made domestically. You have the mainstream media reporting on the review bombing. Oh guys, all the racists are coming out to attack this movie in full force. This narrative is entirely nonsensical, and it is actually discriminatory in itself because it weaponizes the cast's ethnicity. If all these racists are trying to discredit a movie with a diverse cast, then why didn't they do this with Creed 3 or Fast X? Maybe it's because those movies were good and there are no racists. This excuse of review bombing is just that, an excuse because modern day woke Hollywood cannot take responsibility for its failures. The writing for The Little Mermaid is pathetic.
Oh, what it is, you know, as far as I'm concerned, for many years now we've been reporting that there's something wrong with Hollywood, and then when you work out that Hollywood or Disney was probably Hitler and all that, and actors and, you know, all the things he was into and all the problems, is it surprising that we don't trust Hollywood anymore? You know, we just don't trust the place. And maybe they've been so greedy in the first place, maybe the people have had enough. I hope they have, but it could just be part of a game they're playing, because it's always a game.
Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert, covering the woke boycotts. Bud Light is getting it worse than any other company. Target is getting it bad. They've lost $14 billion worth of stock value, and a lot of customers aren't going there anymore. But Bud Light is getting absolutely destroyed. Their former president of distribution for Anheuser-Busch has said today they are losing shelf space permanently. It's going to happen in September, when shelf space is reset based on sales from the prior period. If the beer isn't selling, the stores can't stock it. I've mentioned this before. I'm not someone from the beer industry, but what I can tell you is I've dealt with retailers, and they cannot stock merchandise that does not sell. No matter what incentives the manufacturer provides, stores are there to sell merchandise. If the merchandise isn't selling, it's not going to be stocked. Particularly if you're a #1 brand, there's a large section that's usually set up for you. Some stores will only carry the top 3 brands, and they will feature the biggest brand in the biggest place. Well, that's going to mean that you're going to lose all of your premium spots wherever your product is distributed. This is not just for beer, this goes for all merchandise that's sold in retail stores. On top of this, sales reps are starting to complain who sell Bud Light, because not only are they getting constantly harassed in the streets by customers that are furious with Bud Light, but they're not selling product. And because they're not selling nearly as much product as they used to sell, they're losing as much as a third of their gross income. They can't afford that. They're not multimillionaires. They can't just write it out. Some distributors have said they're going to help make up the missing amount of money for them. Other distributors have sales reps that are unaffected, but then the distributors are needing to make up the missed money out of their own pockets, which is just not viable. And of course, sales have dropped 30% on this beer compared to a year ago, even though it's heavily discounted. We haven't even seen the numbers yet for Memorial Day weekend, which we're expecting are going to be even worse than the week before. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate you guys. I'm trying to get the subscribers up to 15,000, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Thank you so much for that. This is coming from the Daily Mail. Bud Light is running out of time and could lose market share forever. Brand will lose retail shelf space to Miller and Coors if they cannot reverse plunging sales, warns ex-Anheuser-Busch president of distribution, Anson Fredericks. If Bud Light sales continue to lag, the brand risks losing shelf space at major retailers to competitors and locking in lower market share, according to Fredericks. In recent weeks, Bud Light sales have been down roughly a quarter from a year ago, as the brand faces conservative backlash over an April marketing deal with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Now keep in mind, the sales are reported to be 30% off. That's a massive amount. They're giving away the beer almost for free in many places. Beer is 14 cents a can. Some of the beer is absolutely free or cheaper than free because they're giving you a rebate in excess of the cost of the beer. Bud Light's parent company has lost $27 billion in stock market value. The amount of stock market value tends to fluctuate because stocks go up, stocks go down. Where they're at as of right now.
So we've watched the video now. There's quite a lot of information in there from Sky News, other people's opinions. I put the bit on about Ed Miliband because if you understand that they're doing all that in the first place, the bit with Richard D. Hall at the beginning, you might understand this, because this sounds like another agenda. You know, do they want the world to fail so that we can go into some huge great recession? And is this how they changed the world before? You know, you just plunge us into something and then you can change it. What's your thoughts?